Well, I think probably the one that will attract a fair amount of attention is this question of peak China. So you can measure, has China peaked? You can measure that in quite a lot of different ways. One of the ways that China definitely does seem to have peaked is that next year in April, its population will be overtaken by India's, and its population will start to fall, whereas India has still got many years of population growth ahead of it. You can also make the case that China's property market has peaked. If you look at the figures for 2021, for the amount of space that was constructed, I mean, it really is extraordinary. So, in all sorts of ways, you can look at China and say, well, are its days of rapid catch-up growth behind it? And if so, what does a weaker China mean for the world? Does it mean a more dangerous China? Might China decide that there's never going to be a better time with America and Europe distracted in Ukraine to make a move on Taiwan, for example? Now, we're not making that call, but we are saying that this is a tail risk that people need to worry about.
There have been some uneasy conversations about Taiwan out in Bali at the G20 meeting here, but perhaps that's comforting for you to say that you don't think things are going to kick off in 2023. You mentioned population. I mean, it should be noted, of course, that it's 8 billion from today as far as the global population is concerned. That has bearing on all sorts of things, not least climate change. What's the big call on climate change?
The big call on climate change, and it's not just us saying it, it's also the International Energy Association, for example, is that although the war in Ukraine means that European countries are using more coal, again, this is a stopgap measure, and that ultimately this is going to accelerate the green energy transition. If you've always been a bit skeptical about the need to build lots of wind turbines and lots of solar farms, you've suddenly got a very good economic reason to do it, which is it's now much cheaper than using gas. And you've also got a geopolitical reason for doing it, which is that you don't have to buy hydrocarbons from an autocrat that you may fall out with in the future. So we think this is going to accelerate the adoption of those technologies, but also of nuclear, and possibly the biggest winner here is going to be hydrogen. And we're seeing, Europe is starting to look at how it can build facilities that work for liquefied natural gas now, but work for things like hydrogen and ammonia later. So ultimately, there is potentially a silver lining for the climate in all of the mayhem and carnage that we see at the moment.
Tom, we've had this draft statement that the FT's seen from G20 that today's era must not be one of war. What do you make of where we go on the Ukraine story for next year?
Well, it's clear that Vladimir Putin can't win. So the closest he can come is to not lose. And that means spinning out the conflict for as long as possible in the hope that Europe either gives up its support for Ukraine because we have nasty energy crunches next year. Actually, it seems more likely that the winter between 23 and 24 is where that crunch will kick in. Also, political shifts in America. I mean, we'll see what happens if the willingness to support Ukraine diminishes with a Republican House very much. But in particular, if Donald Trump comes back, then Vladimir Putin will be hoping that also helps. So essentially, he's going to be hanging on and hoping that something comes along. Maybe the Chinese will change their position, and so on. So this unfortunately means that we're looking at a grinding stalemate. I mean, there's a small chance that Ukraine could make more rapid gains, and that could be very bad news for Vladimir Putin. But we think the most likely scenario is just a continuation of the really relentless grinding conflict that we've been seeing for the last few months.
Hi, I'm Joanna Bersecci, and thank you for watching. You can check out more of our videos by clicking on the boxes on the screen. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more from CNBC International. Thank you for watching.